Today we're going to talk about panoramics. All right, so almost any camera can do panoramic. The main thing that you want to have is a tripod that's going to help you level the camera. And one of these bubble levels, if your camera doesn't have a level, is nice to add, and they're not that expensive. You want to get your camera on the tripod and level it up so that when you rotate it around, it's level all the way around. So that when you take your panoramic is going to go across the landscape level. It's not going to go like at an angle or down an angle like that. So you want it nice and level as it comes across the landscape. The easiest way to take a panoramic is to actually use live view. In live view, we can see the image in front of us or see what we're shooting. We can also set up a grid on there. Most cameras will allow you to put in a grid overlay. And you can use that grid to judge where parts of the camera are going to overlap. Now, as you take your panoramic, you want to take one shot and you want to make sure the other shot overlaps it some, because that's the part that's going to be blended together. And then your other shot's going to overlap it more. So it's just basically going to leapfrog over each other with a little overlap. Now, about a third to a quarter of the frame it will work. So what you can do is whatever, like if I'm going this direction, whatever is on this side, as I rotate, it's going to come across this side of the screen, and I want to stop it right there where I can still see it. And that way, I know I have a good overlap on each picture. So I will start out shooting here, take a shot, overlap it some, there, here, and there, and across there. Now at the end of it, or at the beginning, I will also put my hand out there and take a picture of my hand so that I know those sets, that group, when I get it in post, go together. If I just start all over again, hopefully, if I start from this direction working back, then I might get confused as to which ones all go together. So make sure that you put some type of signal in front or a picture, take a picture of your hand or something, so that you know that you start all over with another set. Okay, so what to do if your camera doesn't have a grid? Use landmarks. Like when I take a picture here, I'll look and I might see a tree or something on the right side. As I move it over, I'm going to put the tree on the left side of my frame. So use landmarks to overlap as you take each picture. In addition to a tripod and some way to level the camera, you may want a cable release, but you can also use the timer function on the camera, so you can press the button and let the time, 2-second timer, so that nothing moves. But most of the time, depending on how the light is, you're going to be okay just pressing the button, moving it, pressing the button, moving it, pressing the button, moving it. Almost all tripods are going to have some way of letting you pan loosely across like this. You can lock everything else down, but you want to make sure that you're going to be able to pan left to right to get your panoramic, hence the name Panoramic. So one of the things you want to make sure that you do when you're shooting a panoramic is you want to kick it off, make sure it's not on autofocus, and make sure it's on manual settings. The reason for that is as we rotate this, right now it's looking into the sun, so it's going to be pretty bright. As I rotate it around, it's going to be looking away from the sun, so the exposure is going to change, and we want to reflect that in our panoramic. We don't want auto exposure where it makes an exposure over here and the exposure changes as we go through. We can do that in post. We can set it up much better than trying to fix it in post by having auto exposure. We want to have it off of autofocus because as we rotate it around, every time you press the button, it might focus on something different. So as it goes around, things go in and out of focus on your panoramic. Make sure you take the autofocus off and auto exposure off, because in the end, you'll end up with a much cleaner, better looking image. Most panoramics are very wide and thin. So if you want to make it a little higher so that it sort of evens it out and fills up the photo paper, one of the things you can do is you can go ahead and rotate the camera so that it shoots vertical as you spin the camera around. So that way you can get a vertical shot going across. You're gonna have a much wider shot as you paste them all together, and you'll end up with a picture that's gonna be like this and like this instead of a picture that's this long and this high. So try that next time. Almost all of my panoramics that I shoot now are shot vertically like that, coming across, so I get a much higher image. So sometimes on your panoramic, you want to get more information than just this little swatch across the landscape like this. So the way that you can do that is you can take multiple panoramics, one that's lower and higher, and combine them, stitch them together too. So we'd go across and we'd take our shot here, and then we'd raise it up to overlap about 1/3 on the bottom, and then come back across and take our shots like this. In post, what you're going to do is you're going to do the bottom row first, put that panoramic together, put the top row of panoramics together, and then combine those two panoramics, and you'll have a very wide, almost a square panoramic that way. So another thing you can do when you're shooting panoramics, you do HDR panoramics. And high dynamic range just means that we take 3 shots, one over, under, and the proper exposure. So in that case, you're going to set up your camera, take automatic bracketing, and for each sequence, you'll just hold down the shutter and you hear it takes 3 shots. Move it to the next one, 3 shots, move to the next one, 3 shots like that. So when you get it in post, all you're going to do is you're going to combine those 3 shots into an HDR image first. Then you're going to take all of those HDR images and put them as a panoramic. So that way you have an HDR panoramic. So be sure to hit that subscribe button and that little bell next to it. That way you get notifications every time I make a new video.